Yeah, designers' brains are very messy. I think that's the lovely thing, because out of that mess there'll come a little germ of an idea that you can pursue and turn it into something. I went through this stage of folding origami grains, but that kind of evolved into playing with slightly more complex techniques. So this technique that I applied to the light was called Mura-Ori. I think it was developed for a satellite, so it needed to be compact and then had to be able to fan out when it was orbiting. And I found that really interesting aesthetically, because you have this light and dark interplay of over the forms, and I thought that would be really interesting to apply to a light. To get that little motif onto the form, I had to research and play around with generative design. So it was just a matter of taking the surface of the form and then applying a grid to it. And then wherever those grid points were, that one little motif that I'd modelled would be bent and stretched and moulded onto that surface in terms of that grid. And so the actual, that thing of taking it from a piece of paper to an actual product was quite simple, but there was a lot of research that went ahead of that to get to that point. I was pursuing doing a slip cast version of it, but no ceramics people would touch it with a barge file, so I ended up just playing with direct digital manufacture using rapid prototyping technologies. So selective laser sintering is a technique where you lay down 0.1 of a millimetre layer of a material, so it can either be steel, I think they're experimenting with carbon, but the material for that light is nylon. You lay it down 0.1 of a millimetre at a time, but each time a layer has been laid down, a laser will trace a particular section of your model. So sintering is heating up a material to just under its melting point. You heat up the particles, and because they're all sitting perfectly next to each other, they fuse to each other. And then you just keep on doing that until you get the form. And so everywhere that the laser hasn't touched will just still be powder. And you just reach in and you just pull out these strong and robust products. Hence no molds, which allows you to do all sorts of really interesting things. If you look at the images, it kind of belies the actual scale. They look bigger than they are. The main spherical form is 200 millimetres in diameter. And that is for the reason that if you make them much larger than that, they start to get pretty expensive based on the process that I'm using to produce them. So the pleat stool, that was an idea that just popped into my head, which sometimes happens. And I look back on it and thinking, where did that come from? Because sometimes you just don't know. It's like this little synergy of like all these things that you're researching at the time, and there's a little synergy where two will just go bang and become a product. And I thought if I could take this form, which I just doodled down one day, it was just a sketch, and I thought, oh, that might be interesting to pursue. It's a very simple thing. It was basically a series of boomerang type forms that were doweled together. It all fits onto a single sheet of plywood. I thought the nature of using a sheet material to create something that was so organically driven, it's like an organic form that's then cut into layers. I thought people would not like that so much, almost as though it was like a compromise. But people ended up really liking it because you get this chiaroscuro effect, or this light and shade that helps define the form and creates an interesting dynamic kind of quality. Those two products are quite unique insofar as they're a little bit left of what you'd consider normal in the furniture world. Like I think the pleat stool is a little more of a spectacle, like almost like a little piece of art that you'd stick in the corner of your room or something to look at and enjoy. And also the paper pendant is quite different because it sits outside of traditional manufacturing methods. Neither product are volume products. They're almost like little research pieces, like little design research pieces about possibilities